"Mother, this human saved me." The princess returned with a Warrio. The stars above stretched endlessly, a sea of lights that promised adventure, power, and danger all at once. Princess Lysera of the Arthurian Empire had traveled across countless star systems in her life, yet nothing had prepared her for the calm, small world she was about to encounter. Her royal vessel glided smoothly through space, carrying her and a small team of attendants to a distant planet for a peace mission. This journey, though meant to be simple, would change her understanding of strength forever. Lysera had always known duty. From her earliest years in the grand palace of Eloria, she had been taught to obey the rules of the empire, to trust in her people, and to expect respect from everyone around her. She had attended council meetings, observed negotiations, and trained in diplomacy and leadership. Yet, despite her knowledge and upbringing, there had been no lesson for the feeling that came over her now: unease. The planet below, small and blue, seemed innocent. Its green patches and sparkling oceans invited no fear, and that was exactly what frightened her. The descent began smoothly. The vessel's systems hummed with precision, and Lysera watched the swirling clouds of the atmosphere below. She had been warned that planets like this often lacked the technological sophistication of the larger galactic civilizations, but it didn't matter. Diplomacy did not require weapons, she thought. It required observation, patience, and understanding. Suddenly, alarms rang. The vessel shuddered violently and warning lights flashed red. "Engine failure," shouted one of the attendants. "We're losing control." The crash was not loud like the stories of battles she had heard. It was sudden, jolting, and overwhelming. The vessel shook, metal groaned, and then it was still. Smoke filled the cabin and the lights flickered. Lysera coughed, feeling the dust and heat around her. Her attendants groaned, some unconscious, some hurt. She forced herself to stand. "Everyone okay?" she called, though she knew the answer. The silence was heavy. Lysera realized she was alone. The crash had scattered the team and communication devices were damaged. Panic began to rise, but she forced it down. She had survived emergencies before. She could survive this. The forest stretched around her, enormous trees reaching toward the sky, their leaves bright under the sunlight that filtered through. Strange birds called from above, their songs melodic and unfamiliar. The air smelled fresh, sweet with the scent of unknown flowers. Lysera had landed on a planet without cities, without technology, only nature. She did not yet know the people of this world. She did not know whether they were friendly or hostile. Her first instinct was caution. She hid her royal markings, disguising herself with clothing that would make her appear like any other traveler. Survival came first. Status came later. Hours passed. Hunger gnawed at her, but more pressing was the question of water and shelter. She walked through the forest carefully, keeping to shadows, observing the world around her. The trees moved gently with the wind. Small creatures scuttled along the ground. Nothing attacked her. Still, she remained alert. By the time night fell, Lysera was exhausted. She found a small clearing, sheltered by overhanging branches. As she tried to rest, she heard a sound, soft footsteps approaching. Her heart leapt. She was not alone. From the darkness, a figure appeared, human. She had seen humans in holovids, but never this close. The person was not armed. Instead, he carried a small satchel and looked at her with curiosity, not fear. "Are you hurt?" he asked cautiously, his voice gentle. Lysera hesitated. Could she trust him? Her instincts screamed to retreat, yet something about his calm manner reassured her. Finally, she nodded. "Yes, I need help." In the vastness of space, where so many had tried to use her for power, this human showed kindness without expectation. "You're far from home," he said quietly, as if stating the obvious. "Yes," Lysera replied, keeping her voice low. She could not reveal her identity, not yet. "And I do not know if I can return." He simply nodded, helping her to a small hut nearby. It was humble, made of wood and other materials she had never seen. Inside, a fire burned, casting soft light across the space. Lysera had never felt so safe, or so small. Over the following days, the human helped her recover. He made simple meals, showed her how to find clean water, and even crafted a makeshift communicator from the remnants of her ship and materials he gathered. Lysera watched him work with quiet amazement. His hands were steady, his mind inventive, and his patience endless. She had spent her life in a palace where people were valued for their birth, their rank, and their power. Here, none of that mattered. This human judged her not as a princess, but as someone who needed help and helped anyway. Lysera began to speak, cautiously at first, learning about this world. Humans lived simply but thoughtfully. They built communities, cared for their young, and found joy in small achievements. They argued sometimes, yes, but even in disagreement, there was respect. Lysera felt a connection she had never felt among her own people. The human never asked her to explain the stars, her kingdom, or her responsibilities. He only asked if she was comfortable, if she was safe. And for the first time in her life, Lysera felt free from expectation. One evening, as the sun set in brilliant streaks of orange and pink, Lysera asked a question she had not dared to ask anyone before. "Why do you help me?" "Just because it is right." Lysera learned more about humanity than she had in years of formal study. She saw strength not in weapons or armies, but in resilience, in creativity, in protecting others when no one is watching. And yet, Lysera knew she could not remain hidden forever. Her royal fleet would search for her, and eventually she would have to leave. She did not want to go, not because she did not love her people, but because she feared the world beyond this small blue planet would never understand the truth she had discovered. One night, as the stars shimmered above and the fire crackled between them, Lysera spoke again. "I will have to return to my people soon." She thought of her duties, of her kingdom, of the expectations that awaited her. But she also thought of this human, of the lessons she had learned, of the courage that existed quietly in those who did not seek glory. "I do," she said softly, "but not in the way I used to." "Then you will carry what you have learned with you." The stars above no longer seemed endless and distant. They were a reminder that, wherever she went, she would carry the spirit of humanity with her, a quiet, steadfast light that could guide her even through the darkest space. The stars stretched infinitely around them as Princess Lysera's repaired vessel lifted off from the small blue planet. She watched the forests, rivers, and tiny lights of human settlements fade into the distance. The human who had saved her, named Kale, sat beside her in quiet contemplation, his hands resting on his knees. The hum of the engines filled the cabin, yet the silence between them was comfortable. Neither spoke much, but each understood the other in ways words could not express. Kale had never traveled beyond Earth before. Spaceports were limited to humans' own systems, and interstellar travel was mostly a dream for his people. Now, he was hurtling across galaxies in a vessel far more advanced than anything he had seen. He did not seem afraid. Instead, he studied the instruments, absorbed the knowledge presented to him, and adapted quickly. This was a quality Lysera had begun to recognize. Humans, in their quiet way, could endure situations that would terrify others. When they reached the first outpost of the Arthurian Empire, Lysera's royal advisors met them. Their expressions were a mixture of relief and suspicion. "Princess Lysera," one exclaimed, "we have searched for you endlessly, and this human. How did he come to be with you?" She had made her choice. Kale had proven himself worthy simply by helping her survive. That was all that mattered. The journey continued deeper into space, toward Lysera's home planet of Eloria. Lysera knew the Empire would not accept a human casually walking its halls. Even so, she refused to leave Kale behind. "He saved me," she explained to the captain. "If he does not accompany me, he will be left vulnerable, and I will not allow that." But they endure, and sometimes, that is far more powerful than strength alone. He listened, understood, and acted with careful thought. One day, a minor crisis occurred. A navigational system began to malfunction, throwing the ship off course. Alarms blared, and the crew rushed to fix the problem. Panic started to spread, yet Kale remained calm. He studied the instruments, traced the source of the error, and suggested a simple solution that no one else had considered. With his help, the course was corrected and disaster was avoided. The crew stared at him in amazement. He fixed it," muttered one engineer. Lysera smiled quietly. "Yes," she said, and without seeking recognition. They started to rely on his calm reasoning, his patience, and his ability to solve problems without conflict. To Lysera, this was exactly the kind of strength she had seen on Earth, the strength to endure, adapt, and protect without violence. Lysera observed Kale closely. In the still moments when the stars streamed past the windows, she realized how much she had learned from him. Humans did not measure worth by power or rank. They measured it by courage, kindness, and the willingness to act for the good of others, even when it was difficult. Lysera had spent her life surrounded by beings who sought status and control. Kale was different. As the ship approached Eloria, Lysera prepared for her return to the Empire's capital. She knew her people would expect her to act as a princess, graceful, obedient, and reserved. They would not understand her desire to have Kale accompany her, but she did not care. "He saved me," she reminded herself, "and that alone is reason enough." Sensors detected an unusual vessel and security protocols were activated. Lysera instructed the crew to maintain calm. "It is fine," she said. "We are not intruders. We are returning home." When Kale stepped forward, they studied him as if he were an alien, though technically he was. The whispers were audible, a human, a creature of a small, seemingly insignificant world walking among royalty. Lysera met their scrutiny with quiet confidence. "This human saved me," she said firmly. "He will remain with me." "Your Highness, this is unprecedented," one said. "Our protocols do not allow such beings in royal company." Kale was permitted to accompany Lysera into the palace, though under strict observation. Everywhere they went, whispers followed them. Many could not understand why a human was allowed such proximity to royalty. Some even predicted scandal, but Kale ignored the attention. He focused on learning the palace systems, observing etiquette, and assisting where he could. He adapted to the strange customs of the Arthurian Empire quickly. He did not fumble, did not boast, and did not seek reward. He simply acted carefully and respectfully. One day, a mechanical failure occurred in the palace's transport systems. A team of engineers scrambled to fix it, but the problem was complex, involving multiple levels of navigation, power, and logic circuits. The engineers grew frustrated, their attempts creating confusion instead of solutions. Kale stepped forward. He studied the system calmly, tracing patterns that others had overlooked. He suggested adjustments and realignments, simple but effective. The engineers followed his instructions, and within moments the system worked perfectly. The palace officials were shocked. Whispers turned to questions. Who is this human? How does he know these things? Humans could succeed not because they were stronger, but because they were adaptable, resilient, and courageous without needing recognition. In private moments, Lysera spoke to Kale. "Do you understand what you have done?" she asked. Kale shrugged. "I helped. That is all. If anyone benefits from it, then I am glad. That is what makes you extraordinary." Slowly, the court began to see him not as a mere human, but as a figure of reliability, intelligence, and courage. Lysera saw the change in the court firsthand. She realized that Kale's strength was not in violence or domination. It was in his heart, in his mind, in his willingness to endure, to help, and to remain steadfast in the face of doubt. Humans, she reflected, had a power that no technology, rank, or weapon could ever replicate. As the ship docked in the capital, Lysera and Kale prepared to face the full weight of the Empire. She knew there would be trials, skepticism, and tests of his worth. But she also knew that Kale's presence had already changed the hearts of those around him. He had shown, quietly and without fanfare, that a human could be more than anyone expected, a protector, a problem solver, and a silent warrior of integrity. Lysera felt a renewed sense of purpose. She would not hide Kale's contributions, nor would she allow the court to dismiss the lessons she had learned on Earth. Together they had faced the unknown, survived against odds that seemed impossible, and emerged stronger. The Empire would learn, she hoped, that strength came in many forms, and that sometimes the smallest, quietest beings could leave the greatest impact. And so, as the twin sons of Eloria sat behind the grand towers of the capital, Princess Lysera walked alongside Kale, ready to face the Empire with confidence, knowledge, and a new understanding. That courage was not measured by blood or rank, but by the willingness to protect and endure, even when no one was watching. The grand palace of Eloria stood at the heart of the Empire like a living monument. Its towers curved toward the sky, glowing softly under the twin suns. Inside, long halls echoed with whispers. News of the human had spread quickly. A creature from a small blue world now walked beside the princess, not as a servant, not as a prisoner, but as a guest. Many found this idea troubling. Princess Lysera felt the weight of every stare as she entered the central hall with Kale beside her. The nobles, scholars, and advisors gathered there judged everything by tradition. They believed power came from birth, status, and control. Kale fit none of those rules, yet he stood calmly, his posture relaxed, his eyes observant. The High Council assembled in a wide circle. At its center floated a symbol of authority glowing with ancient energy. One of the elders stepped forward. His voice was calm but firm. "Princess Lysera," he said, "your return brings relief to the Empire. However, your choice to bring a human into the royal domain raises concern. Our customs demand clarity. That is why I am here." Instead, Kale offered neither. He did not beg. He did not argue. He simply spoke the truth. Lysera stepped forward. "This human saved my life, not for reward, not for status. He acted because he believed it was right. If that is not worthy of respect, then our empire has forgotten its own values. Then tradition will decide. The human shall face the trial of worth. Judgment, pressure, difficult choices." Kale did something different. He asked questions. He studied the behavior of the system, not just the structure. He noticed where fear caused waste, where poor communication caused loss. Instead of forcing solutions, he adjusted connections. He reduced pressure, improved cooperation, and allowed the system to stabilize naturally. The projection glowed green. The observers whispered. "He didn't dominate the system," one said. "He understood it. It's that they stopped listening." Many before him had panicked, trying to save everything. Kale did not panic. He chose to save people over systems. He accepted loss without denial. He adapted continuously, adjusting plans as conditions changed. When the simulation ended, the chamber was silent. The High Elder spoke softly. "You accepted failure. What matters is who you protect when it does. That's enough. Tell us why." Humans are not dangerous because they conquer. They are dangerous because they endure, because they inspire loyalty without fear. And now I see why. In the days that followed, Kale's influence continued quietly. Workers spoke of how he listened. Advisors noticed how conflicts softened around him. He never commanded, he cooperated. Lysera watched the empire change, slowly but surely. And she knew the final moment was coming. The moment she would speak openly, not just as a princess, but as someone who had been saved. The empire had tested the human. It was not prepared for what he had already done. And soon, Lysera would stand before her mother and the stars themselves, ready to tell the truth. The Grand Assembly Hall of Eloria had never been so full. Representatives from dozens of allied worlds filled the curved seats, their colors, shapes, and quiet movements forming a living map of the empire. Above them all stood the Queen's platform, carved from crystal that reflected the twin suns. Today was not a celebration. It was a moment of judgment. Princess Lysera stood in the center of the hall. Kale stood beside her, hands folded calmly, his eyes focused forward. He wore simple clothing, unchanged despite the attention. He did not look like a hero, and that was what made the moment powerful. The queen rose slowly. Her presence silenced the room. "My daughter has returned," she said, her voice steady, "with a story that has unsettled this empire." Lysera stepped forward before fear could take hold. "Mother," she said clearly, "I asked to speak. I was alone on a world we barely noticed. He helped me because I needed help. When I returned home," Lysera said, "he came with me, not for reward, not for recognition, but to ensure I was safe. Then listen to what he taught me." "And this human," she asked, "what does he seek?" "You walked among those who doubted you," she said. "You were tested, watched, judged, yet you never defended yourself. Not because we were the strongest, but because we learned when to change. Yet you carry no weapon. No chains of obligation, only respect. Not with demands but with questions. Curiosity replaced suspicion. Quiet respect replaced fear. Later, at the edge of the palace gardens, Lysera walked with Kale beneath glowing trees. "You changed everything," she said softly. Kale shook his head. "I didn't. You spoke the truth. I think that's the easiest promise I've ever made." And in the halls of Eloria, one truth was now whispered among the stars.